Alright guys, Cremp here again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day. So for a potentially huge day in the context of the rest of the season, OpTic have been catching flack from every single angle after deciding not to make a change following their top 8 finish at Major 3. Shotzzy said they showed more potential behind the scenes than they showed publicly, and he believed it was only a matter of time until they turned it around with this roster. Tonight's result, if they can somehow bottle that and replicate it for the rest of the season, OpTic could be right back on form to be a serious contender this year. Where did this come from this evening? What's going on with Surge? Some big results elsewhere as well, because this champs race is now maybe over before it's even begun. Very much interested in your thoughts on the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Asama Graphics cooks up again with this absolute masterclass, I thought, going into, well, the final match that Falcons would play with their World Championship qualification hopes still alive. We'll see that in a few minutes' time. Just wanted to mention before we begin with the matches, this was Doug Levy put together his probability of making champs on various scenarios, and well, it's got a little bit tasty maybe as of today. This is what the data looks like based on 10,000 simulations. Now, of course, this is based on ELO data, I imagine, with the respective performances of the teams, who they play against, and run a number of potential simulations and see what the chances look like. Ravens, after today, I'm sure, are 100%. Boston, maybe closer to the 89%. Who knows? But yes, it was really on paper anyway, between the CHOKKR and OpTic, but OpTic were looking at somewhere between 40% chance of making it, whereas CHOKKR were looking more like 60% chance. Kind of wild to think about. I guess this is mainly because OpTic, their record against teams better than them was just horrific from January until today. So I kind of understand why that was understandable, maybe, but after today, these numbers are going to look very different indeed, especially because of this series. And again, it's just another absolute Minnesota CHOKKR classic. It does feel like it's at some point an organizational problem at this point. They've had different rosters over the last few years, but the outcome is just always the same. They get close, they look good, and with very few exceptions, they bottle it, right? And even with Kenny coming in, look, Kenny individually has played well enough that I think his stock may have even gone up after the OpTic situation. I don't know what you guys think. I don't think Kenny's stock has gone down after the OpTic scenario. I wonder what other pros think about it, because it doesn't really matter what the fans think. It's more about what the players think. Because the fans had Kenny's stock very, very low after the OpTic stint, and for good reason maybe, but I think the players always would have held Kenny, and still will, in higher regard, let's say. But this stint, does it help or hurt his stock? I think for the fans, it's been pretty negligible, really, because maybe individually he's looked a bit stronger, but has the team got any better since Paul X? I honestly think they have. They just have no ice at all. And game one, this is meant to be Falcons' bread and butter, right? Their hard point. That's been where they've been good. And CHOKKR come out and they slam them 250 to 80. And you're thinking, damn, here they go, baby, right? Minnesota CHOKKR, they're here to play. The champs race is on the line. They're going to come diffy this stage. But the interesting thing, I suppose, is that both of these two teams, and it's funny with the whole Pred angle, isn't it, right? Because, you know, obviously, if Pred was to lose, he helps CHOKKR. If he was to win, then he helps OpTic. So goes a couple of ways. But it's both of these teams have been struggling in their search and destroy. Certainly true for the Falcons. And CHOKKR as well, a big problem for them. But also, surely that's what you've spent the last little while working on, is trying to level up your search and destroy. And despite a nice start to this red card search, Falcons eventually win it. Good map here from Priester and Artetes. And then the control, this was really the game that you can't really afford to lose. It's not a good game mode for Falcons. If you're CHOKKR, you can't be getting 3-0'd by Falcons on a Hacienda control. That's what happens. They win the game 4 in the end anyway, because, you know, Falcons decided to lose another hardpoint. Honestly, it was pretty crazy because this game was an absolute bloodbath again. Falcons made it a bit competitive. Geo dropped some crazy numbers. And then it went to 5. And when it went to 5, did anyone expect anything else other than a Game 5 round 11? Because this is just what the Minnesota CHOKKR do. I mean, it's just so predictable from CHOKKR. And it's tough, right? Because all of those players are talented, but for some reason, they just can't seem to get into their heads how to actually close out these moments. And honestly, if CHOKKR had won the Game 5 Round 11s they've lost in the last few weeks, they'd have been right there with OpTic for champs. But they didn't, and they're not. And that's the big point. I mean, this final round as well, they decided, all right, we're just going to rush. And it didn't go to plan. Falcons hard countered it. Xnid, by the way, look, he's not had a great map every single map that he's played, but when they needed him, game 5, Xnid dropped like 14 frags for the win, and that was a big deal. You know, look, he's got 3 world champions as teammates, and it's Xnid doing, at times, a lot of the heavy lifting. Kenny found himself in a 1v3, nothing he could do about it. And Falcons get their 2nd series win of the year on the board on the day, and what a time to do it, right? They beat OpTic a little while ago, and now they've taken down CHOKKR when it mattered, right? And, like, effectively, CHOKKR are going to have such a hard time now making champs. The reality is even Cloud9 will fancy their chances, maybe more so than CHOKKR will, after this recent result. And it is kind of crazy, right? They brought in Kenny. I still feel like they've looked better, but, you know, the results don't really spell that picture, right? I mean, they've won 2 matches with Kenny in. BenJ was crashing out on them and said, I thought this was pretty incredible. I might be able to count on one hand the number of good weekends of COD CHOKKR have had in 6 years. Pathetic, he says. Just an iceless franchise year in, year out, choking champs qualification, which is true. They've done it for years at this point, and this year does look like it is going to be no exception at all. Kenny was very frustrated with the outcome, of course. You know, he's probably got to weigh up the idea that, yeah, making champs right now is not likely. This seemed at the time to be a great result for OpTic, and it still is a great result for OpTic, but, you know, I think there was a feeling for many that OpTic against Surge, it was going to be an uphill battle, and therefore CHOKKR losing was a really big deal. I mean, here's Kenny with a smile on his face, maybe recognises, okay, I'll see you at the World Cup, buddy, or whatever, with the, you know, some serious money is still on the line. But a real tough way to lose if you're CHOKKR, especially because they won both the hard points pretty emphatically in the end and still found a way to get Neslo'd. I mean, it is just an embarrassment, really. Even the game 4, they kind of tried to choke it as well. I mean, like, they were up so big. And I mean, look how much they outslayed by. 23, 25 kills to win by like 50 points. Shouldn't be happening, right? I mean, outslayed Duo 40 and 22. And they only won, not marginally, but you know what I'm saying anyway. So that was a disaster. CHOKKR, I mean, where do they go from here? Where does Kenny go from here? Like, do these other players get poached next year? That's a big talking point, I would say. The next series was very interesting. Now, Boston were the favourites for this one. I thought they'd win, but you know, Ravens, they're online, you know, these guys online, you never really know what you're going to get sometimes. Rex played a bit better the other day. They're still lost, but he played a bit better. And Slasher, if he plays a bit better, the team is still on paper really damn good. And, you know, we finally got to see a bit of it today. They played the Skyline. Awakening had a very uncharacteristically terrible Skyline hardpoint. Usually he's good at this one, but he got slammed. They lost the game 1. They lost the game 2. The only highlight for Boston was one of the best clutches you're ever going to see. Crazy as well to think there have only been 2 1 versus 5s in COD history. One was in Search and Destroy in 2019 by Looney, now the coach of Minnesota Rocker, on this very map, Hacienda. I think it was Splice versus Evil Geniuses. I might be wrong, but it was in Search and Destroy. Looney has a famous 1v5 on this map, and a few years later we have another 1v5, this time in Control, but it was a clean 1v5. I mean, he gets the first kill onto Gwinn, guns the seconds, TJ tries to get traded from Slasher, but he hits some disgusting shots while sliding backwards onto Slasher. Then he finds the 6th kill of his streak, and then he perfectly reads Gwinn in the 1 versus 1 as well. And then even while he was a little bit weak, he takes the gunfight and absolutely nails him. So amazing round from Cammy. But they still lost, and Ravens take the win 3-0. So, you know, this is a really big deal for the Ravens. Look, they're still going to make champs anyway, but the idea of maybe they found something in their play, because, look, Boston didn't play well today, but still, Ravens definitely found a bit of a gear. Their individuals turned up for the first time in some time. We'll certainly get to this series here in just a second. Before we get to that one, though, we've got to round out and close the loop on the Ravens stuff. You know, it was interesting. There was a bit of drama between Parasite and Octane. So Parasite was saying, whoa, Ravens beat a team that's not top 4. Who's surprised? And Octane and, you know, Parasite are beefing a little bit on this and saying, look, Ravens haven't been good. They've not beaten quality teams lately. So let's not get ahead of ourselves, I think was the argument that Octane was kind of making here, causing him so dense. So, yeah, we shall see whether Ravens can kick on. At the end of the day, It is online COD, it is what it is, but a good result, and I think certainly for Rex, I mean, since he's stopped playing Thieves every series, it's looked a bit better for him, hasn't it? I mean, he's still sitting at a 0.92 overall, but if you look at his first series, he had a 0.6 against Thieves, a 0.8 against Thieves, 0.75 was rough against CHOKKR first round of Major 3, but since then, positive against Toronto, and now 1.35, so, you know, maybe it's all coming together, and this move may well, at some point, deliver some results. They're going to be there at Champs. Who they play round 1 is a question. Right now, it is looking like Surge, and Surge are looking kind of beatable. Let's talk about it, right? Because earlier today we discussed it. Shotzzy said that he wasn't going to tweet after the matches anymore, and to be fair, he didn't tweet after this series either, but from the very first moment here, it felt like OpTic were coming a little bit different today, and, you know, they played at some great pace. Shotzzy was on fire. I mean, Shotzzy was phenomenal at the major as well. Just his decision-making sometimes lets him down, but that is what it is with Shotzzy. It's about the rest of the team maintaining the level pace. And, I mean, look, Surge were a bit shaky yesterday. They lost to FaZe, but they still won both hardpoints, let's not forget. They lost to FaZe in 5, it was a bit controversial. It raised some questions, of course, but then Surge today played OpTic, and it was expected that, okay, Surge are probably going to bounce back. They're going to show the team that just made the finals at the major just a few days ago. And it's confusing for Surge, right? Because they've made 2 finals in a row on LAN, and I know that there is a feeling that, okay, Surge are playing online largely out of Vancouver, so their internet scenario is not considered to be optimal. They should be better on LAN than online, although so far this season it's been, you know, pretty nip and tuck between the pair of them, although I would say they have been better on LAN. Their online play has still been very impressive in general, so I don't think we can necessarily take that as the fundamental deciding factor. Surge just got slammed, and OpTic were doing the slammage. And this is, you know, look, you look at this OpTic team. This is the type of stuff they should be doing to teams on occasion. Nastie had a bad series yesterday and had an absolutely horrific series today. This man was dropping OpTic Kenny numbers, respectfully. He had a 0.5 today, Nastie, and yeah, it was not pretty at all. This moment, Octane actually lost his mind because Shotzzy died and Skyz didn't trade him. Well, he did trade him, but he traded him a bit late. He went for this laydown cheese spot. It kind of worked out, and OpTic actually held the time, but look, it's not like there aren't criticisms towards OpTic. I mean, Octane, we saw the clips earlier today, Octane, JCap, among others, you know, adamant that OpTic should have made a change. As I said over the last few days, my opinion was, and still is, that keeping Skyz, I didn't mind it, right? I was on board with the idea. You know, I do think that on some degree they're settling to try and be respectable rather than taking a risk to try and be the best. But, you know, as I said, I get it, right? I do kind of get it. And clearly there was enough reason for OpTic to believe and Shotzzy to believe that the potential was in there somewhere. And today we saw what that potential looks like. And if they can play like this again, you know, if they can bottle this up and execute on it, you know, who's to say they can't make a Sunday? Who's to say they can't even, you know, try and really contend? Because this Surge team has just played FaZe and Thieves in 2 grand finals in a row, and they've just been absolutely whitewashed by OpTic today. So, you know, look, we know the potential of OpTic. They've got Shotzzy, they've got Dashy, they've got Huke, they've got Skyz. These guys are all world champions, and Skyz had a masterclass series today. It's just about putting together, and even Shotzzy mentioned in his post-game interview, the accountability. Thought that was a key word. I was like, oh my god, Shotzzy's talked about accountability. Yes, finally, they get it. You know, we'll see, right? But you know what I'm saying, right? That is, we talked about it a lot over the last few days, that being a critical word in the OpTic camp to get right, and it seems like they may have made some strides there, right? I'm certainly hopeful that that is going to be the case. They win the game 1. Again, I mean, look at this game too. Surge, they have the setup. It's a 4 versus 4 retake onto the site. They get guns, 1-2. Nastie's in a tough spot. Shotzzy makes the flank and they kill everyone. Like, honestly, just beautiful work. Nastie was in so, like, you don't know what to do there, right? Because the OpTic guys, they sack at it perfectly for mid, getting the right frags, you know, taking the bait, not playing outside of one another. I mean, it was just sensational work. And the control you had around like this, where OpTic within about 30 seconds have captured B, they've got all the kills and they're over to A, they dominate the rounds. I mean, this is just unbelievable stuff. They then dominate the final round too, and before you know it, that is a GG. OpTic Texas absolutely slam your recent major grand finalist 3-0. Wasn't even close. Like, just completely obliterated them off the face of the planet. Look, not a great series from Surge. They obviously did play their best stuff, nowhere near it. Questions to be raised on that. Maybe OpTic caught them off guard to some degree, who knows? But the reality is that OpTic Texas have finally done it. Since January, they hadn't beaten a team that's going to champs. And they've done it, right? They've finally done it. And yeah, what a long road it has been. Are they over it yet? Are OpTic back? Is this it? We can't be too premature in the analysis necessarily, right? I mean, look, it is one series at the end of the day. Was this just a magic moment that OpTic won't be able to replicate? But at least it shows them that it is in there somewhere, right? Like what Shotzzy's been saying on stream about, look, I tell you guys, I promise our practices are good. Like, we are capable of something good here. They've finally shown the world that actually, yeah, they are capable of it. Whether they can consistently do it, that is the next question, and we're going to see the answers to that, frankly, next weekends. But as for a start to the weekends, this is what OpTic would have wanted. Shotzzy with a 1.3, Huke with a 1.4, Skyz with his best match of the season, probably, certainly for OpTic, Dashy with a 1.3, and then we got Nastie with a 0.5, Abuzah with a 0.6, you know, Neptune tried, but, you know, not hard enough, I suppose. And with that victory, Falcons are officially eliminated from champs, despite all the hard work they did today for OpTic to still make it. So very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments. Lots to discuss tomorrow, I'm sure. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.